Hi everyone, Yarnie Markovina here, and today we're going to be having a look at this new Yarnie record. How else did you expect this to turn out? This is the third record from Australian singer-songwriter Yarnie, who released the albums From the Balcony and Near Far in 2021 and 2022 respectively. And despite the charm that those two records had, they really didn't do much for him in terms of, visibility, chart success, whatever. Functionally, to this day, Yarnie remains a pretty much unknown artist, globally, locally, pretty much everywhere. But that did not stop me from getting excited from when I heard that there would be a new Yarnie project dropping. I did quite enjoy his previous works, primarily for their fun fusion of just like a ramshackle production style, great power pop, indie pop melodies and such, and some really great lyric writing. Basically, the understanding I got from Yarnie as an artist, just getting started out, flexing his creative muscles over his projects, was that he liked to go for a bit more of a grab bag of styles, of influences. You could see everything from things inspired by Wilco, that's a key influence from him that I've discovered, to things like Pavement, The Pillows, a lot of classic 90s indie rock sort of stuff. But then there was also, influences in there from more obscure sources like an Adam Green or a Big Star. Basically, you could see on those albums Yarnie be flipping back and forth between more straight ahead, like raucous indie pop sort of stuff, and more contemplative, string-laden ballads. And all of this was couched in, again, what I thought to be quite clever and quite a profound lyricism to a certain degree. The issue I had with these records was their sometimes baffling and amateurish production choices. There could be a track that was very serenely mixed and produced, and then there were others that were just compressed to hell and back. And yes, I'm aware that Yarnie mixes, records, masters, plays, writes all these tracks himself. This is a very much independent artist who does everything on his own, but that I felt like made some of the projects suffer, where you could just see the instrumentation and the performances really wanting to blossom into something grand and great, but was held down by just lack of skill and ability in the mixing and mastering regard. Whatever the case may be, that is why I was hoping going into this new project that there would be an improvement in the technical side of things, and I can say upon listening to the record that yes, there is that, but I have some caveats. Without further ado, we should probably just dive into this record. Unlike his previous projects, how else did you expect this to turn out? Opts for a more consistent tone throughout. His previous records, you could go from this really upbeat, high-octane energy song to this really sad, lonely, depressing sort of thing the next. In this case, this is all a very consistent tone of melancholy and sadness and a reflection on, guilt, worries, and that carries over in many regards to the sonic palette as well. And I can say on the lyrical front, yes, this record contains a very consistent lyrical tone as well. Maybe not enough to entirely be called a full-blown concept album, but there is a generalized framing device of a relationship that runs the gamut from the courtship to the doubts within the relationship and to reflection back on said relationship and a potential moving on. That's the basic through line of the album, so I see it. So basically, with this newfound focus of artistic direction on a theme, I was intrigued to see what he could bring to the table in this regard. And I can say that the opening leg of this record actually hits the nail on the head quite nicely. The opener, Kill Your Heart, is a very spare, very slight, very beautiful opener with acoustic guitar, slight bass, some lovely, sweet electric guitar lines in there, a double-tracked vocal. Lyrically, it's quite simple, just the repeated refrain of Kill Your Heart with a couple of other lyrics thrown in there. But it gets the point across, and definitely goes for a different opening tone than his last two records, which had very explosive openers. And listening to this, I could definitely tell that he was getting a bit of inspiration from that Big Thief record from last year, even a bit of the Common Linnets as well. Basically, this track sets the tone for what is to follow. Next up, we have Smile and Stare, probably one of the most positive cuts on the record, but still there is this tone of sadness to it underneath the major key instrumentation. There is some shining acoustic guitar work on here, again, very faint, very brushed kind of drums on here, and an absolutely liquidy, gorgeous guitar line at the end of the song. It's honestly just truly beautiful. And lyrically, Smile and Stare seems to be telling a story of the beauty of just enjoying the presence of another person. It's very sweet, it's very charming. The next track though, Some Other Time, seems to be a bit more of like a warped mirror reflection of this same song. Again, a very simple palette of acoustic guitar and voice. Lyrically speaking, it's a lot darker and speaks a lot to this kind of like a probing inadequacy for future events to come in this particular relationship, and even a reluctance to think about how toxic this potential relationship could be in the present, opting to think about it some other time. Moving on, we have The Time I Was Falling. Now, this one musically is far more in line with his two previous records in terms of just the layers upon layers of lush instrumentation over the top of one another. And while I do like these kind of lengthy piling ons of a lot of melodic ideas, because they can be like fun ear candy and lovely window dressing for some lovely lyricism at the heart of them. I'm thinking in particular From the Balcony's Sidewalk. This was a great example of this particular style. Yarnie has kind of treaded this path before. It seems to be like one of his calling cards, these lengthy, mid-tempo, shining pop confections. The only issue I have with them is that notoriously they seem to be, well, the ones that suffer the most from that badly mixed issue and concern from before. The previous three songs were not so bad in the mixing department, in my opinion. This one, though, depending on what device I listened to them on, suffered a little bit. So, yeah, a bit of a downgrade in the mixing mastering department for this particular song. But the point is, the song at the core of this is wonderful. It seems to suggest the tale of these people getting together, one person reminiscing on the time that the person was falling in love with the other person, and the positive tone of that sentiment matches the major key tonality. But at the tail end of the song, there is this idea of doubt that is creeping in, and as a result, the instrumentation takes a hard turn into a minor key, very plodding, bass-driven outro, which is beautiful and haunting to see the transition from the positive to the negative so seamlessly. I do like the trick on this one a lot. And again, some great layering of different melodic ideas at the tail end of the song. Yarnie seems to be quite adept at this point. This is not to be denied. Moving on from this, we have the solo piano cut, I Can Do Better Than You. And douchey title aside, it's actually a bit of a bait and switch. Again, in another clever lyrical move, Yarnie sings the verses basically saying in this particular relationship that he can do better than this other person, he can find someone else better, that, you know, the other person isn't good for him. But at the tail end of every verse, he finishes with the line, "But I don't want to." Ooh, it is such a sucker punch out of nowhere. It really saves the song, in my opinion, because otherwise it's a little slight. I get what he's trying to go for with the instrumentation of this, like, you know, keep it sparse, keep it spare, you know, to really like highlight the emotion of the piece. But it seems a little amateurish again. But the song does stand on its own. It has a very bittersweet melody, very boyishly sung, and again, that lyrical turn at the end of every phrase, highlighting this resigned nature to this toxic relationship, is a bit hard to bear. It's pretty cutting. It's pretty cutting upon listen. Moving on from this, we have a couple of tracks that sees Yarnie doubling down on this more sparse acoustic instrumentation. Moving on with the next track, It's Far Too Easy to Miss You. And yes, the first half of the song is just that spare instrumentation, but it builds in the second half with these gorgeous glacial strings and this kind of moody bass line in the mix. The instrumentation of this second half of the song really sells this tragic portrait that Yarnie is painting with the lyrics here. There's not much I can hold in my hands when it gets past 10 p.m. except my phone glowing bright. I'll never sleep all right. Yeah, you can tell with this that Yarnie's really getting somber, really down in his feelings, and probably the best skill that Yarnie has in his arsenal as a songwriter is this way to create this vivid imagery, and this can very much be seen in lyrics like this. We have Fight with Tension, again another acoustic guitar cut. This one has this kind of like washing out, airy sort of a soundscape in the background there. Again, this is another sad cut, this is another anxiety-riddled cut. Yeah, you can definitely tell that Yarnie is struggling with something on this project, and these are just like, you know, these confessionals just pouring out. Like, Yarnie, like, it's okay. Just saying, it's okay. Whatever you're feeling, it's fine. I will say, though, that vocally, this one is one of the mid-range songs. Again, probably should say that Yarnie, to me, has never been an exceptional vocalist. Hell, even a good one. His vocals have been passable to, you know, honestly, a bit off-key in a lot of regards. And the kind of like shoddy mixing on past projects never really helped with that. As a vocalist, I don't necessarily think that he's found a specific style, a specific tone that he's like kind of like got for his own. Like on his previous albums, he was experimenting with like lower pitch voices at one point, higher pitch voices at another point. But nothing's really like properly stuck, and I think that's one of the gripes I do have with Yarnie in general, is that vocally he's just not that consistent. It's a little bland, it's a little flat. Thankfully though, the lyrics do make up for it, but come on, he ain't no Bob Dylan. Even with all the another acoustic guitar cut comes up next with I Don't Like It in My Head. This is a song that delves quite literally into the concept of the mind and, you know, hating yourself. It's pretty dark, if it wasn't, you know, packaged up so sweetly in the instrumentation in this regard, which is very closely mic'd acoustic guitars, you know, one in the left channel, one in the right channel. Same thing with the vocals. They're kind of like these dual vocal lines that are just kind of competing for one another. Again, closely mic'd. It really does feel like for this track, Yarnie was listening to something off the Carrie and Lowell album from Sufjan Stevens. It definitely reminds me of a track off that. It's very haunting, it's very beautiful. I will say some of the lyrics on there read a little bit like teenage poetry. I entertained too many bad thoughts, even though I never invited them to dinner. I gave my feelings personalities so I wouldn't have to feel alone. I mean, I get where he's coming from in regards to trying to make a visualization of the concept of anxiety and loneliness, but it does come off as a little naive, a little childish, but the point still gets up across. So, you know, I'll give him marks for that. Moving on from this, we get the final 3 tracks on the album, capping off this album at a nice tight 40 minutes with 11 tracks. This is a world away from the previous 2 albums, which were pretty much an hour apiece. The next 2 songs are a return to that same type of instrumentation as The Time I Was Falling, although I do think these ones, production-wise, are actually handled a lot better. Fall in Love With Me especially. This one is the longest cut on the album, 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes actually. From the title, you'd expect like, oh, fall in love with me, oh, this is gonna be some plea to like, oh, have this person fall in love with me, or blah, blah. But in actuality, as you get further into the song, you realize that he's not pleading someone else to fall in love with him, but he's pleading himself to fall in love with himself. That is, on paper, a little bit of a self-help guru kind of thing, but it comes across as quite genuine within the context of the song. Basically, the story of the song, we set the tone with our protagonist meeting someone at a stroke show and going out for Korean food afterwards. And with each encounter, Yarnie delves into how tragically these relationships he lets slip by. to which he realizes that maybe the problem is himself, and that he needs to fall in love with himself in order for him to succeed in moving forward in terms of his relationships. It is interesting to see this lyrical avenue be taken. Again, it comes across less as a self-help guru kind of talk, and more like a frank and honest discussion that we kind of need to have with ourselves from time to time. So like props to that regard. And again, some of the most lush instrumentation you will find on this album features on this track. Is it necessarily in line with a lot of the solo acoustic guitar cuts throughout? No, it's far more grandiose than that. But honestly, I'm kind of thankful for that, because it means that the style of the acoustic guitar, white boy kind of thing doesn't get too stale and overplayed. Instrumentally, the tail end of this song is absolutely gorgeous. The drums start building up. There's this real grand tone that starts to be created as he basically just ends on the lines, "Now I'm just hoping that you'll be coping fine." Oh, such a sweet, oh, it's so sweet, oh, it's so sweet. That leads to the penultimate track on this one, Silver Linings, which after the onslaught of, cutting, probing discussion over relationship woes, over self-doubt and identity crises all throughout this project, we finally get to some kind of conclusion with Silver Linings, in which he is looking at himself and a significant other. Within this track, there is an end of a relationship. There is a sadness there, but he doesn't let that hold him down, realizing that there are silver linings to everything, and that more than anything, he wants the other person to be happy, moving on, moving forward. And that in turn reflects back onto himself as potentially moving on, moving forward, which is honestly a lovely message to go out on in this project. Once again, the instrumentation of Silver Linings is quite layered, quite lush. You get some string sections at the back end of the song. You get some little flute parts coming in there as well. The drums, I will admit, are a bit muffled. Actually, in all honesty, a lot of the drums of this project are quite muffled, but I've noticed that the drums and the percussion don't necessarily tend to be the strongest component in Yarnie's music. But still, Silver Linings has beautiful instrumentation in there, a surging acoustic guitar line in there, some lovely jangly electric guitars, and again, the aforementioned string sections as well. But yeah, this would be a wonderfully positive note to end this quite sad and self-reflecting album on. But just at the tail end, right at the end, we have Good Night, Go Away. A very quick, very brief cut of just Yarnie with his acoustic guitar. Very nocturnal. Honestly, it sounds like a midnight recording, just alone in a dark room, no light penetrating at all. He sings in this very quiet, very hushed tone, the refrain, "Good night, but please go away." Honestly, this song kind of ends the album on a bit of an ambiguous note, after having gone through this whole song cycle, looking at the positives and the negatives of getting into a relationship, figuring out the problems associated with that, and also the self-doubt that comes there. And then even after he has achieved some level of peace and solace on Silver Linings, this final track kind of frames the album as even after all of this, he's still going to choose a path of isolation, which is honestly kind of sad. But hey, that's the album that this guy wanted to put across, so there's that. So that's it. So with this album, did I enjoy it? Honestly, yes, I did. Again, those production and mixing issues were present once again, but I will admit that they weren't as prominent this time. You can tell that there is progress being made. Yarnie is slowly becoming a better mixer, a better producer, but I will say, I feel like to make these songs shine the best that they can be, it's not too much to, to find, a proper, a professional mixer, a professional master. You can do that. I'm pretty sure you can do that, Yarnie. I'm pretty sure you can find that. Because at this point, I can sense that Yarnie's works tend to be in this kind of uncanny middle ground between a ramshackle bedroom pop production where a lo-fi aesthetics reign supreme, but then also this kind of aspiration for a more polished production. And sitting in this awkward middle space for his songs, I don't think is necessarily painting these songs in the best light that they possibly could be painted in, despite how much you can get out of these songs lyrically, musically, melodically, and so forth. But having said that, this is a fine record. It is beautiful, it is sad. I'm feeling a light to decent 7 on this thing. Basically would be intrigued to see what he comes out with next. Transition. Hello there. Yes, you made it to the end of the video. Hooray. Thank you. This album got as good a score as Damn did. Ha ha ha. What did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? Hit that Upworthy link. Please subscribe as well. Click the bell as well for notifications. Yarnie, how else did you expect this to turn out? Forever.